My boyfriend has depression. Medication and expert consultations cost tens of thousands of yuan a month. In order to cure him, I took on painting assignments and delivered takeout day and night. My friends all advised me to be careful not to die from overwork. Until one day, I got a delivery order for a rich villa area. I respectfully handed over the takeout of high-end Japanese cuisine worth 18,000 yuan with both hands to the customer. When I looked up, I saw my boyfriend, who should have been in psychological counseling, standing at the door, looking at me in shock. Shouldn't you be at the hospital? James. I looked at the elegantly decorated and luxurious villa. The left hand holding the Japanese cuisine box was clenched so tightly that it hurt. Although the temperature was as high as 40 degrees. I trembled as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. I had only seen places like this in idol dramas. Sorry, Mia. Listen to my explanation. Dr. Liu had something urgent in the afternoon. I just came to a friend's place to play. Facing this sudden exposure, James, a bit flustered, pulled on my sleeve. This is his usual apology gesture. It has always worked. But it fails at this moment. I coldly slapped James's hand away. The brand name of the custom-made shirt on him was unknown to me. But it was ironic. It was more in line with his temperament as a rich kid than those basic clothes. I lowered my eyes, took out my phone, and clicked into the appointment interface of Qingcheng Hospital. After finding that there were still available appointments with Drive Liu in the psychological department today, I didn't even have the interest to expose him. Taking a deep breath, I cleared my thoughts and said in a calm voice with a serious expression on my face, James, is it fun? Pretending to be a poor and depressed young man by my side and not even willing to buy a cup of milk tea. In fact, you are a rich young master who spends 18,000 yuan on a single meal. The corners of my lips quivered as I stared angrily at the man in front of me. I didn't even realize when my eyes were filled with tears. You really tricked me like a fool. At 10,000 yuan, I need to deliver 6,000 orders. It will take 2 months. The most ridiculous thing is that the only interface on my phone that hasn't been closed is the message I sent to James half an hour ago. I said that I would add more dishes tonight and planned to make his favorite lotus root soup. Because the customer in this rich area was very generous and gave a tip of 100 yuan. But I never expected that this tip was given to me by James himself. James always hugs me in the middle of the night and says that in this world, he will never doubt my love. Even the love of his parents for him is not as pure as mine. These whispers once made me happy that I could be a lucky one in a world where sincerity has become a rare commodity. But looking back now, it seems that no one would be so stupid as to risk heat stroke for a 5 yuan high-temperature subsidy fee just to gather his medical expenses for this month earlier. I haven't had enough sleep for 5 hours for a long time. I dream of your recovery one day earlier. You know all this very well, don't you? The questioning tone gradually choked up. James's originally relatively calm expression showed a crack. His eyes were slightly red as he nodded. In that crowded, old and small one-bedroom apartment, it takes half an hour to walk to the subway station. He watched me work hard. He watched me use every penny carefully. He watched me be in distress but desperately pay for this false experience gain, just to treat his supposed depression. The whole time, he watched coldly like a creator. I will transfer a sum of money to your bank card as compensation. This matter is my fault to you. James lowered his head slightly, with guilt and a bit of helplessness in his eyes. Realizing that he couldn't make up an excuse anymore, he simply gave up. I stiffly took out the wrinkled order slip from my pocket. It was half a meter long, and one side was filled with the highest grade meats. Then I crumpled it up and threw it at him with all my strength. James didn't dodge. His expression was sad and mixed with remorse. The cool air in the room brought a bit of coolness. Under the cicada chirping, footsteps came from not far away. Along with it came a female voice, cocky as sly, saying, James, haven't you got the takeout yet? I'm almost starving. 3 James, and I stopped the stalemate. His expression slightly changed. When we both looked back, We saw a young girl in a lace nightgown walking over. James hurriedly stepped forward to stop her. Why did you come out? I'll go back inside soon. Be good. Go in first. But the girl seemed determined to find out. She bypassed James and looked at me with a smile. There was a hint of familiarity and contempt in her apricot-shaped eyes. This is. No one responded. Seeing our mutual silence, she curved the corners of her mouth. Then naturally, she took James's arm and pulled down her light pink slightly see-through nightgown. The red marks on her neck and the curves under the fabric were clearly visible. She leaned weakly and bonelessly against James. The man's uneasy gaze fell on me. I desperately turned my head and closed my eyes slightly. The sweat-soaked hair stuck still to my face. There was a throbbing pain in my temple. Even if I were slow-witted, I should be clear about what had happened. Originally, I thought I was just an unlucky person in the rich people's experience of a civilian game. Now it seems that I am also a flavoring agent in the love story of the rich kids. It's really unlucky. So I didn't want to stay any longer. I turned around and packed up the takeout box and was about to leave. But the girl suddenly called out to me. Wait. Are you James's girlfriend from the slums who he dates outside of school? I didn't recognize you in the takeout uniform. Are you Mia from the School of Humanities and Law? For I stopped and looked back at her. After half a minute, I finally recognized her. She is my senior from the previous grade. That Amelia who has superior family background and appearance and is surrounded by everyone. But we have had a feud. Because she used underhanded means to help someone else take away my subsidy for poor students. I have never been as obsequious and fawning towards Amelia as the people around me. Seeing my gloomy expression and done naturalness, Amelia tightened her hold on James's arm even more. She pretended to be delighted and spoke in a coquettish voice. James. I didn't expect that last year when I casually complained to you about a pretentious junior who was very annoying. After you asked a few questions, you actually really helped me deal with Mia. I admire this method. It's so clever. Amelia raised her eyes, gave me a glare and continued. So clever that you made Mia, the talented girl in our college, run around like a dog. My hands slowly clenched at my trouser legs. The cool air in the room blew on me. But I couldn't feel any coolness or relief. For these people, everything of ordinary people, such as future, feelings, money, and sweat is like an eyesore weed by the roadside. They not only ignore it but also step on it, and spit on it. Amelia kissed James on the cheek as if it were a reward for fooling me like this. Her eyes glanced at me provocatively. Then, as if remembering something, her expression became strange and crazy. She asked, Junior Mia, did James say that he has depression? I frowned and didn't deny it. Seeing this, the woman in front of me immediately laughed so hard that she bent over. But the words that came out of her mouth made me feel extremely cold all over. That's because I told James that you have a younger brother who committed suicide because of depression. As long as James says that he has depression, you will definitely be stupid enough to fall for it. Sure enough. 5 As soon as the words fell, there was a momentary pause in the air. Only the cicada chirping remained. My mind suddenly lost control. I bit my lower lip hard, took off my takeout helmet and held it in my hand. I frantically hit James with it. If I endure this silently any longer, I might as well open a steamed bun shop tomorrow. My chest heaved violently. I shouted. Depression. Right? Pretending to be poor. Right? Liking to poke people's sore spots. Right? You deserve that your parents don't love you. You beast. You deserve that your dad beat your mom in front of you. Why didn't he beat you to death together? I'll beat you to death for your dad today. In the year that I spent with James, whether it was acting or true feelings, we had shared our weaknesses with each other. So I knew that what he could never get over was the indifference and neglect of his parents towards him, making him never experience family love since he was a child. And at this moment, this became my weapon to verbally attack and curse him. Before the two of them could react, I hit James's face hard again and again. Because of my anger, I was breathing heavily. Due to long-term lack of rest. My head began to feel dizzy. At the moment Amelia mentioned my younger brother Daniel, the rationality that I had been holding on to all afternoon instantly collapsed. He is my reverse scale that no one can touch. Until Amelia pulled me away. James didn't fight back at all. He covered his mouth. His hands full of blood. Are you okay, James? I'll call the police right away. This crazy woman is so reckless. She dares to hit you. I'll ask my dad too. Amelia's angry voice was tinged with crying, but James grabbed her hand and shook his head. No, don't. I owe her. He straightened his hair that I had messed up and walked up to me. He took out a gold card from his pocket and handed it to me. The password is your birthday. I know that things can't be undone. But forget it. I'm sorry. I sneered. There was only coldness and hatred left in my eyes when I looked at him. Die sooner. I forcefully took the gold card from his fingers. After leaving these words, I turned and left. There were 770. yuan in the card. After asking the boss of the takeout outsourcing company for my settled wages, I resigned. The 23 square meter one-bedroom apartment could be seen at a glance. At that time, James and I moved out of the dormitory because he said that his physical symptoms of depression were getting more and more serious. So he wanted me to accompany him every day. Originally, I was not without precautions against James, who bravely barged into my life. But seeing that he had the same symptoms as my younger brother, it's off in my heart and made me confused. For a moment, it was also difficult for me to tell whether it was mostly love for him in the past or my eagerness to compensate due to my infinite guilt towards my younger brother. I just crazily and stubbornly wanted to cure James's depression. It seemed that in this way, a nightmare that I couldn't get over would be alleviated. Speaking of which, in a year, there were quite a lot of things. But the couple's items that were in pairs were rather glaring. So I simply threw them all in the trash can. Listening to the sound of the old air conditioner blowing air, I stared at the ceiling and slowly escaped from the continuous hard work day and night and fell asleep. In my dream, I couldn't count how many times I had dreamed of Daniel in the bathtub. He lay lifelessly in the crimson liquid. His whole body was as pale as a porcelain doll. There was no temperature or sound. The medicine bottle fell by his drooping fingertips. His long and slender eyelashes that were slightly closed were just like the curve when he waited for me to finish studying, and dozed off day and night in the past. But this time, he would never open his eyes again. He would never rub his sleepy eyes and ask when his sister would go to bed. In my phone, he cleared all his chat records with everyone. In the end, he only left me a sentence, "Sister, I'm sorry," and a transfer of 3,516.81 yuan. This was all the money in his pocket. That year, spring was in full bloom. Daniel, like a child of heaven, left in the best season, and I was forever trapped in that spring. The sound of the plastic bag behind the door woke me up. A man in a black shirt was squatting by the trash can, furtively rummaging through something. Who? The man paused and slowly turned around. It was James. He was still wearing a mask, and there were several bandages on his face. I supported my somewhat aching forehead and forgot that he still had the key to the rental apartment. The couple's rings, water cups, watches, and souvenirs that I threw into the trash can in the afternoon were all taken out by him and neatly placed on the ground. What are you doing with these? James lowered his eyes and brows upon hearing this. His emotions unreadable. I'm just here to pack up some things and take them away. They are all worthless things. Does James still look up to them? Sitting up from the bed, I took a look around to see if there was anything important left in the room. Since it's like this, I also plan to go back to school and live in the dormitory again. I'm going to terminate the lease here. James held the inexpensive silver couple's ring in his hand and gently rubbed the ring with his thumb. His voice was lonely as he said in a low tone, "Mia, I know you don't believe me, but I am truly sincere. I really only trust you. No one has ever loved me so sincerely. I don't want to miss you. I waved my hand and chuckled with my head down. The scene from the afternoon appeared in my mind ironically again. Sincere about what? Is it because you love me that you deliberately asked me to deliver the food after you had sex? Should I thank you? I can explain the matter with Amelia. Nothing has ever happened between us. Being together was just a casual promise before. And I wanted to break up with her long ago. I have realized that the person I really love is actually. It's unnecessary to discuss this. I interrupted him coldly. My eyes indifferent. The water in the bathroom dripped into the bucket. The faucet at knee height had been leaking all year round. To save some water bills, I had been using a plastic bucket to catch the water. The money saved could only be a few pennies. Unsincere love is laughable when spoken. At the moment when the scam was exposed, whether it was sincere or not, there was already an insurmountable gap between us. In fact, James, when you used my brother's matter to approach me, did you ever think that the boomerang would one day come back to you? What do you mean? I didn't respond. I just frowned and opened the door to ask him to leave. Seeing my resolute expression, there was some hurt in his eyes and brows. Then he stuffed all the things on the ground into his bag and stood up. Don't pretend to have depression anymore. Because for every person like you in this world, the stigma of depression becomes more serious. And it becomes more difficult for real patients to get help. There will be one more person like Daniel. After a while, the man in front of me slowly nodded. Then James took out a bag of pork ribs and lotus roots from behind the door. He saw the message I sent about adding more dishes. Can you make lotus root soup for me one last time? No. Your family's chef can make it better. I only like the one you make. Mia, why can't you believe me once and give me another chance? His voice was already choked. I never thought that James, who had resumed his status as the young master of King Cheng, would also show a pleading expression on his face. At this moment, everything no longer conforms to the settings of the civilian game. Whether his words were true or false, I remained indifferent and silent. He understood that I was refusing and wanted to hold my hand but finally let it drop. Before leaving, James's eyes were red. He looked back at me. Do you still love me? No. Can you love me again? No. After James left, I started to tidy up the clutter at home. I was preparing to return to school next week. After tidying up until the middle of the night, I sat slumped on the sofa and my gaze fell on a box in the corner of the closet. I looked at the bed that originally belonged to me, which was piled with takeout and express delivery trash. Even the table under the bed had insults like, "Whore Mistress" written on it in red paint. Scarlett, a classmate majoring in the same field who had a relatively good relationship with me, stood beside me somewhat at a loss. Mia, I tried to stop those seniors, but it was useless. They said you offended someone you shouldn't have. Scarlett took the trash from my hand, her tone a bit guilty. I gave her a comforting smile and continued to tidy up the bed. Also, Mia, have you seen the school forum? It says that you interfered in the relationship between Amelia and James. The campus heartthrob of the School of Mechanical and Electrical Engineering. Now there are already hundreds of floors of scolding below. I saw that the evidence inside is still quite sufficient. Are these all true? I stopped wiping the bedboard, frowned, took her phone, swiped my finger, and briefly browsed the content. Most of them were photos of me and James entering and leaving the school together, as well as chat screenshots of Amelia and James being together since the summer vacation of their freshman year. But the two had never made it official. I twitched the corner of my mouth, speechless lie. It was just to fix me that they said they were a couple at this crucial moment and poured dirty water on me. From the timeline, outsiders would think that I was indeed an involved party. I didn't respond to Scarlett's question about whether it was true or false. I just thought for a moment and took out my phone and called Amelia. The call was picked up after 3 rings. I got straight to the point. This is Mia. Wait for me at the coffee shop at the North Gate at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The noise on the other end stopped. Then Amelia sneered. Oh. I thought who it was. Mia. It's too late to regret and apologize now. I don't have time to see you. This person who has a mother but no mother. It's about Daniel. Amelia, who was still about to say vulgar words, stopped after I interrupted her. After a long silence, the other end responded, "Got it." The sunshine at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, although not as intense as at noon, is still harsh. I stirred the latte in my cup and took a small sip. My mind was recalling the few words about Amelia in the diary. At this time, the wind chime at the entrance of the coffee shop rang. The sound of high heels stepping on the ground stopped in front of me. Amelia was wearing a blue and white strapless dress. This was the first time I looked directly at her appearance. She had cute and small facial features, but there was often a hostility that didn't match her temperament in her eyes. I lowered my eyes and clicked my tongue in my heart. Still disgusting. She sat down in front of me, put down her designer bag, and asked, "What's the matter about Daniel?" I didn't talk about other things and got straight to the point. "You liked Daniel, right?" Amelia's hand holding the menu stopped. Then the pink-purple nail on the corner of the page was instantly clenched. There was a flash of pain in her eyes, but it was hidden after 2 seconds. "Where did you hear that? How could I like such a poor person? Ridiculous." Her tone was as domineering as usual, but she twitched the corner of her mouth unnaturally. "Daniel's diary mentioned you many times. He said that you confessed to him 27 times. I slowly put down the teaspoon I was stirring and looked at her with an unshakable tone. The fragrance of coffee beans filled the air. At this time, the boss was still busy in the back kitchen. Amelia's pupils constricted. She opened her mouth but stopped talking. In the end, she didn't deny it again. She supported her forehead with her right hand, lowered her eyelashes, and didn't look at me anymore. Without a positive response, her evasive attitude suddenly irritated my nerves. I took the painting I had put aside and placed it on the table. It was Daniel's relic, a painting full of withered sunflowers. "So? Why did you copy his painting when you liked Daniel? Why did you hack his competition spot? Do you know how important this competition was to him? Singing and painting have been his favorites since he was a child." 10 days after Daniel's painting, Lost Sunflowers, was plagiarized, he committed suicide. And the person who plagiarized him was Amelia. She turned her head and her gaze fell on the painting framed by me. Suddenly, hatred welled up in her emotions. "Even after his death, you still play with his family like this. Amelia, your love." Her chest suddenly heaved violently and her emotions were almost out of control. The word love seemed to sting her. Amelia picked up the cup and smashed it on the ground. She stood up like crazy and shouted at me with red eyes. "What do you know? As his sister, what do you know about him? Why do you question my love for him?" Yes, I liked him. But for the first time in my life, I liked someone so much. I gave him everything I could. I snatched 10 records of the band he liked, not knowing what brand of sneakers he liked. I just bought them all, and gave them to him. He liked to play some stupid shooting game that made me dizzy. But still, in order to have a common topic with him, I started learning from scratch. Whether it's money, or sincerity, I offered it to him on my knees. What do you know? When have I ever been so humble? It doesn't matter if he rejected me 27 times. It really doesn't matter. I can persist. Because I really like Daniel. Amelia cried bitterly. Her throat was already hoarse. She slumped on the sofa and looked at me with despair in her eyes, tears continuously streaming out. But at this moment, my originally relatively controllable heart was completely stirred up. Such a truth made me even more incomprehensible. So I continued to question, "So, why? Why did you plagiarize him? Do you know that on the 10th day after the competition ended, he left? Do you know how deep the wound on Daniel's wrist was when he committed suicide? How determined he was to die? Amelia, tell me, aren't you one of the murderers who killed him?" In my urgency, I was a bit short of breath. A nightmare-like scene appeared in my mind again. Facing my questioning, Amelia's lips quivered. She didn't respond. Her eyes were full of confusion. She trembled all over and took out a lady's cigarette from her bag. Just as she was about to light it, she was stopped by the clerk. So she simply crushed the cigarette bit by bit and said, "That weekend, he went to a well-known commercial performance that I recommended. After coming back, he was like a different person. When I asked him how the performance was, Daniel looked like he wanted to kill me. He said that I was the most disgusting and hated person to him. He called me a beast and a whore. I can still remember the way he pointed at me and insulted me that day as soon as I closed my eyes. You don't know how desperate I was. My heart felt like it was about to suffocate. I don't know what happened. I just heard from my dad that there were star agents coming to this commercial performance. It was an excellent opportunity. So I secretly told Daniel. But after it ended, he suddenly pushed me away as if sentencing me to death. I also have my own pride. It doesn't matter if he doesn't love me. But why humiliate me like this? After that, I gave up liking him and even wanted to retaliate against him." She couldn't finish speaking because of choking, but everyone understood. Unrequited love easily turns into hate. As Amelia said, a person who grew up being surrounded by everyone wants nothing that she can't get. Since she couldn't get it even by giving her all, then destroy it all. So her hatred for Daniel didn't end even after his death and spread to me. Taking away my subsidy for per students and asking James to fool me were all just continuations of her hatred. Why do you know about me and Daniel? He treasures his sister the most. Doesn't he? He hides everything from you except good news. He is afraid that you will worry about him a little. To be honest, I envy you that he cares so much about you." The ice in the cup had slowly melted. Some latte flowed out from the rim of the cup. I rubbed the calusas on my hand and recalled Daniel's somewhat delicate handwriting. I read the diary he left behind. Then, did he always hate me? Or did he have even a little bit of affection for me? I can't answer this for him. Hearing this, Amelia in front of me immediately lost all the sparkle in her eyes and brows. Even the hatred disappeared. In the diary, at the time when Daniel cursed Amelia, there was indeed a commercial performance. After that, his diary style changed from the ordinary joys and sorrows at the beginning. It became full page after full page of Alexander die. A force that penetrated the paper seemed as if every stroke wanted to tear the person under the pen to pieces. It was a hatred that was difficult to summarize and describe in words. But he didn't write anything else except these 4 words. I had no way of knowing the reason and other details. I looked up at Amelia, who was in a daze, and asked, "I'll ask you one last question. Alexander is your father, right?" That leader of the school board. Amelia came to her senses. She was a bit puzzled by this seemingly unrelated question but still nodded. "Yes. He is my dad." 11 The heat on the school firm continued to rise. On the way back to the dormitory, many passing men and women around were pointing and whispering. But I was only thinking about Daniel's matter and didn't even react when someone deliberately bumped into me. A figure blocked beside me. "Don't you look where you're going?" I looked sideways. It was James. He was wearing a baseball cap and scolded the person who had just bumped into me. This sound made the passers-by around stop one after another. Some people even took out their mobile phones and took pictures of our faces. Adulterer and whore. These two still dare to walk together. Really? Have no shame. I ignored the comments of others and frowned at James. "Why are you here?" He lowered his eyes full of worry, and said in a deep voice, "I have posted to clarify that you are innocent and unaware. But I'm still worried that someone will attack you like just now." I rubbed my somewhat painful shoulder and glared at him. Didn't he think about who brought all this? "You. Haven't you these 2 days?" Before he could finish his hesitant words, a stone was quickly thrown in my direction at this moment. James sensed it before me and immediately stepped forward to block in front of me. I turned to look at the place where it was thrown. The boy in a denim jacket quickly disappeared into the crowd and was nowhere to be seen. Although James reacted in time, the stone still grazed his cheek and left blood. He covered his face in pain, twitched the corner of his mouth, and glanced at me from time to time, as if deliberately waiting for my comfort. I sighed in my heart and said to him in a low voice, "James, there's no need to do this. There's no possibility for us anymore. No matter what you do, I won't turn back." His eyes, which still had a little hope, completely darkened, but as if comforting himself, he murmured, "I won't give up. What are you clinging to?" I was very puzzled. I couldn't understand why a person who fooled others' sincerity was still so preoccupied with about his mistakes instead of looking for the next prey. I've never been so painful and remorseful. I don't know either. This feeling is very strange. I only know that I love you and feel guilty towards you at the same time. So seeing you are doing something for you makes me feel better," James confessed. But at this moment, the silver ring on the middle finger of his left hand was shining with a cheap light under the street lamp. Just like our year. Wrong and insignificant. 12. The post accusing me of being a mistress was deleted by the publisher late at night. Originally, the whole forum was full of abuse. Now, it has been completely cleared. Since then, I have never been targeted by Amelia again. Life has returned to its usual calm except for James's daily disturbance, which annoys me. Another sleepless night. I logged in with the account password left by Daniel. That is his painting blogger account with more than 300,000 fans. In this field, he is somewhat famous. His ID is Lonisara. Since he was young, Daniel has shown amazing talent in the fields of painting and music. Even in the somewhat difficult Triel environment where I couldn't provide him with the best education, he could still shine to the fullest extent. I scrolled the mouse and browsed through previous posts. Most of the initial works were fluffy little animals and natural scenery, but still at that node. After Daniel participated in a commercial performance in the second semester of his freshman year, the painting style changed. The fluffy animals turned into dark giants, devouring and tearing him apart. In fact, looking back, everything happened too quickly during that time. From when I found that he started taking antidepressant drugs to when he left, it was only 2 months. At that time, he was irritable and had unstable emotions. I wanted to care about him again and again but was shut out. At that time, I was shocked and helpless, and could only go along with him. Later, Daniel's resolute departure made me, who was desperate and confused, urgently want to get a reason. But after searching back and forth, everyone said that depression and suicide were the answer. Do you know Daniel from the School of Art? I heard that he committed suicide because of depression some time ago. Really? Is it true? How could this be false? The school has been holding psychological education lectures recently just because of this. This was when I had just finished Daniel's funeral. On the way back to the dormitory, I heard two girls in front discussing. In the truth presented in front of me, I began to numb and yield. I even gradually accepted this cause of death and stopped struggling for other possibilities. But now, Daniel's relics have opened up another opening. My thoughts returned. The breathing sounds of my roommates sleeping were deep and shallow. My hand sliding the mouse paused slightly and I clicked into the private messages of Daniel's account. Most of them were reminders from fans. When he first stopped updating, many people came to urge him every day. But it has been 2 years since he left. Recently, few people still remember the blogger Lonisara. Until I found an account. The user's avatar is a winter scene and the ID is William. The continuous private messages on it for 2 years were all after Daniel left. There were confessions, crying, unwillingness, and regrets. From the content, I found that she was also a student at a university. And the most recent private message was, "Daniel, I'm sorry. I know the truth but I can't avenge you." Seeing this, the originally dim avatar suddenly lit up and she was online. I sent her a message. "I am the blogger's sister Mia. Can we meet?" A few seconds later, the reply came, "Okay." 13 She made an appointment to meet me on the lawn of the playground at night. William was wearing a black dress. At the moment she saw me, there was a glimmer in her gloomy eyes. She recognized me immediately. And I also recognized her. There was no mistake. That mole between the eyebrows. The girl in front of me was the class commissary in Daniel's high school class. She once asked me to give Daniel a music score. It was a hand-copied guitar score. Inside was Daniel's favorite English song, Last Summer. Why am I so impressed with William is because when Daniel saw this gift alone that year, his eyes were shining. He liked this gift the most. William sat on the ground beside me and looked at the freshman in a circle singing songs opposite. A smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. I used to sit here often and watch Daniel sing. At that time, there were much more people surrounding him than now. I had to look around 360 degrees to find an angle to see his profile. There was nostalgia in her eyes and brows. Her voice was also soft and gentle. It seemed that time had returned to the previous year. Daniel was sitting in the middle of the playground, playing the guitar and singing an original love song. But as the surrounding noise deepened, her expression became darker. I regret it very much. Sister, I have had a crush on Daniel for the 6th year. I followed him to a university. But until he left, I never had a formal confession to him. Just if he knew that there was one more person in this world who loved him, would his thought of leaving be a little weaker? William's throat choked. She confided these thoughts to me with a sour expression. I raised my hand and patted her on the shoulder to comfort her. But I found that she was terribly thin. Almost only bones were left. William looked in the direction of the crowd again. Her eyes seemed to become calm and cold as if she remembered something. Sister, do you know the school leader Alexander? My heart skipped a beat and I nodded slightly. It was he who killed Daniel. At that commercial performance of Daniel's first semester of freshman year. I was at the scene. After it ended, I originally wanted to stop him and confess. But I saw him and the members of his band get into Alexander's car together. It was he who tricked Daniel that an entertainment company was interested in him and wanted to sign him. So he organized a meal together. But after that, William trembled continuously when mentioning these things. The evening breeze lifted the corner of her skirt. I could feel that she was also shaking all over. She hugged her arms tightly and couldn't stop the tears from flowing out. After Daniel died, I have been secretly investigating Alexander. I had a feeling that he was inseparable from this. I knew that he often ate at the Mingyu Hotel on campus with the people on the school board. I went there to work part-time. For 2 whole years. For 2 years. I finally recorded evidence after he got drunk once. She lowered her head and searched for her mobile phone from her bag. Because the movement was too big. A bottle of medicine fell out. I was stunned. After seeing it clearly, my nose suddenly became sour. I knew all too well what this medicine was used to treat. Daniel had taken it. I had also bought it for James. Her skinny hand trembled as she opened a recording and handed me an earphone. At first, it was just noisy background noise. Several men were flattering each other. At this time, suddenly a deep male voice said, "This one who delivered himself is not very interesting. Alexander is still picky. This little star looks good to me. But he still can't catch your eye." Far from it. Not lying. Over the years, I still like that band lead singer the most. I've had my eye on him for a long time. I was thinking about him at the orientation party. Later, I still tricked him into thinking that Fanxing Entertainment would sign his whole band. Only then did he come to the drinking party. After drinking a sea of alcohol, I finally got him into bed. But with his tender skin, it was very worth it. Which one? Which one? It's the one who committed suicide later. Oh right. Daniel. His suicide really gave me a fright. Hurry up and let the school arrange psychological lectures. He really can't take it. Otherwise, I could bring him to play with you guys. The noise in the background gradually faded away. There was a slight current sound in the earphone. It wasn't until there was a bloody taste in my mouth that I barely came to my senses. My chest heaved violently. My brain seemed to be short of oxygen, making me unable to speak. I trembled and took out a plastic bag from my bag and covered my mouth and nose. On the day Daniel committed suicide. On the way to the hospital. I also had such a state of confusion and difficulty breathing. The doctor said it was respiratory alkalosis. If it was an emergency, covering the mouth and nose with a plastic bag could be used for first aid. I remembered. William saw that I was in an abnormal state. She quickly put away her mobile phone, squatted down and surrounded me. In the process of slowly recovering my sanity, I finally pieced together everything that Daniel had encountered. The earth-shaking changes in his diary and paintings, his sudden malicious words towards Amelia, his sudden depression and collapse, and his resolute decision to die, all had answers. After seeing that, my eyes gradually became clear. William couldn't hold back anymore. She tightly hugged my neck and burst into loud sobs. Sister. But what should we do? Even with this recording, we still can't defeat Alexander. He is famous and powerful in King Cheng. There is simply no way to do anything. At that time, my younger brother must have been so desperate. When ordinary people face those at the top of power, what chance do they have? Is there only one way to swallow it? A recording and a victim who has already passed away can never form a favorable chain of evidence. Even if Alexander is really sentenced, is this punishment really enough? It is very likely that he will escape. I looked up at the sky. Thick clouds slowly covered the moon. I lowered my eyes, wiped away William's tears, and raised an encouraging smile at the corner of my mouth. All these years, you have worked hard. On behalf of Daniel, thank you. Thank you for liking him for so many years. 14 After that night, I began to have a continuous high fever. In between being awake and in dreams, chaotic nightmares intertwined. Finally, after an important professional course ended, I fainted in front of the classroom and was sent to the hospital. I woke up from a dream in which Daniel, with blood and tears in his eyes, questioned me why I left him at home. There were many such dreams with the same plot and unchanging experience. Under a dim yellow light, with a severe headache, I opened my sore eyes. I saw the figure sitting at the head of the bed. He was wearing a blue and white shirt and his eyes were focused on me. After confirming that I finally woke up, his eyes suddenly turned red again. James picked up the hot water on the table and helped me sit up. Under the condition of being thirsty and dry-mouthed, I drank it up in 2 or 3 gulps. The doctor said you have a viral infection. Why are you so careless about your body? He asked. I didn't respond. What exactly happened to you? I stared at the ceiling and still didn't respond. I just ignored him. In the following month, James stayed by my side day and night and took care of me in every possible way. At first, he would still ask me a few questions, but I remained silent all the time. So he gave up communicating too. On the day before I was about to be discharged from the hospital, I looked at James, who was concentrating on peeling an apple for me with his head down and was lost in thought. That night, the moonlight was bright. In the ward, an old-fashioned love movie about lovers dying for love was playing. Amid the heart-nicking cries of the actors, I asked James softly, "Do you really like me?" He looked up at me. His eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he nodded and said, I like you very much." After hearing this, I clenched the 6-pointed star necklace around my neck with my right hand. If you really like me very much, then I want to kill someone. Can you help me? 15 James used his family's connections and the recent reason that his family wanted to start a new education brand to invite Alexander to have a meal at home. James' family and Alexander's family have been friends for generations. Alexander was not on guard. Half an hour after the appointed time, a black car stopped outside the abandoned factory building where I was waiting. James dragged out the unconscious Alexander from the car and threw him on the ground. You don't have to worry about the rest. Thank you. When I turn myself in, I won't mention you. I distanced myself without emotion. But he looked at me as if he wanted to say something but stopped. His expression was full of grief. It seemed that he still didn't want to see me make such a choice. Mia, your younger brother is already dead. Why can't you let go of the past and start over? You are like this. Shh. Don't say any more. Isn't it supposed to be like this? He killed my younger brother. Isn't it right that a life should be paid for a life? In addition to the obsession that as an elder sister, I should avenge him. I also thought. Since I was young, I stood in front of Daniel and beat away the senior students who bullied him. I helped him drive away the spiders and cockroaches he was afraid of. I wiped away the tears he shed when he missed his parents. So, he always said that I was the bravest Superman sister in the world. And this time, after I know the truth, I shouldn't be cowardly in front of him. Right? It should be like this. I tied Alexander to a chair. I cleaned all his clothes. I took out his mobile phone and lifted Alexander's finger to unlock it with fingerprint. The purpose is very clear. At the bottom of the album, there is an anonymous album. Clicking in. As expected, there are an astonishing number of videos. People like Alexander are very likely to do this. Scrolling down, finally I found that late spring of the year before last. After a little confirmation, I closed my eyes numbly. I picked up the water bottle beside me and woke up Alexander by pouring water on him. He choked. His small cloudy eyes were full of panic. When he saw me clearly, he was full of confusion. Who are you? I didn't respond. Alexander looked around and continued to test tentatively while pretending to be calm. Do we have any feud? Remembered Daniel? Alexander frowned upon hearing this. His shoulders secretly twisted twice. He was trying to break free. But it was useless. The strength of my binding made my palms bleed. I don't know. I think there must be some misunderstanding. I am his elder sister. You don't have to be nervous. I just have a few questions to ask you. Until now, when he knew my identity and still couldn't break free. Finally, he couldn't hide his panic and began to tremble. Continuing to pretend to be stupid was obviously useless. He understood what kind of feud and resentment it was. Alexander's lowered head kept lifting and begging for mercy. Even a few drops of sweat were thrown out. I'm sorry. Regarding your younger brother's matter. I was confused after drinking. If you want financial compensation or I plead guilty, I will cooperate. As long as the little girl you spare my life, everything will be easy to talk about. I looked at her expressionlessly and picked up the knife prepared in advance from the table. Seeing that I was indifferent to the temptation, he began to threaten. Think clearly. If you do something excessive, you will also be held legally responsible. And as long as I move my finger, I can make you die in King Cheng without anyone knowing. I sneered. The hand holding the knife paused slightly and I ignored him. Just thinking about the video just now, I asked, I want to ask you. Besides this mobile phone, are there any backups of these videos? Alexander's eyes darkened. Obviously, he understood what video I was referring to. The flash on his face trembled. More and more cold sweat flowed. Then he responded, trembling, lie, no more. Seeing this, I raised my hand. Before he could react, I without hesitation put the blade in my hand on his right hand. In an instant, the warehouse was filled with Alexander's painful howls. Tell the truth. Don't waste time. I looked down numbly. The gushing blood flowed all over the place. Seeing that he still didn't answer, I raised my hand again and aimed at his left hand. In the study on the second floor of my house. The second drawer on the innermost side of the bookcase on the left at the staircase. The key is the smallest one in that bunch on the ground. I looked sideways at that bunch of keys and considered the truthfulness of his words at the same time. After confirming that it was basically not a lie, I nodded and continued to pick up the blade. Seeing this, he panicked and tried to move the chair back. You said that as long as you answer the questions. Then, fear of death made Alexander unable to express himself clearly. But it doesn't matter. This is his last sentence in his life. I frowned. Then what? Forget it. Keep your voice down. Maybe I will be gentler if you do this. 16 After everything was dealt with. It was already 3 o'clock in the early morning in the latter half of the night. I pressed off my mobile phone and thought that there wasn't much time left for me. I needed to explain some things before turning myself in. I found a hotel and took a shower in a hurry. Then I made an appointment to meet William. She saw that I still looked pale and was a bit worried. Sister, pay attention to your body. Even if we can't avenge Daniel, we can't muddle along either. He won't be happy to see you like this. I nodded and tittied up my somewhat messy hair. I didn't plan to tell William what happened last night. Let her think that this was God's will. I raised my hand and took out the gold card that James gave me from my pocket. I put all the money in it, gathered 800. 0 yuan. Take this card. She wanted to refuse. But I shook my head. William, you are one of the few people who truly treat our siblings well. In fact, Daniel and I have never received much kindness since we were young, so the way we repay may also be relatively clumsy. When we were young, we often heard our parents say that we should have drowned me and Daniel in the toilet back then. At that time, when I heard this sentence, I only felt scared. But recently I feel that children who even their parents don't want to live should really not exist in this world. So, only then, after struggling in the quagmire until the age of 20, I am still dirty and smelly. The person I want to protect is torn apart. The person I chase after to save is an illusion. In the end, I snatched a few more years from the malice. Seeing this, William suddenly grabbed my hand. The strength made my wrist slowly turn red. Sister, don't think wildly. Meeting Daniel and you is the luckiest thing for me. None of us should not exist. Especially you two. I was stunned, looking at her firm eyes. I curved the corner of my mouth, but I felt that she was telling a kind lie. William's tightly clenched hand was still skinny. Her clothes couldn't hold her up either and hung down. If she hadn't met us, she would have had a brighter life. At the end of summer, the cicada chirping gradually subsided. I raised my hand and tittied up the stray hairs on her forehead. William, after this summer is over, start a new life. Forget about me and Daniel. 17 After seeing William, I went to find Amelia. She absently stirred the ice in the cup. It should be because of the disappearance of her father. When I looked through Alexander's mobile phone last night, I saw Amelia's incoming call. I pressed it off. Her mother died early. Since she was young, Alexander has raised her. Presumably, the relationship will be deeper than that of ordinary fathers and daughters. I didn't say much to Amelia. After all, no matter how reasonable the reason was, she and I were enemies. It was an established fact that she plagiarized Daniel. So I only handed her an old mobile phone and the key to Alexander's study. I destroyed all the other keys. In the mobile phone was the recording of her father Alexander confessing to violating Daniel after drinking at Mingyu Hotel, as well as the video of Alexander violating Daniel on his mobile phone and the location of the video backup, and the photos of the diary text when Daniel and Amelia got along relatively happily in the early stage in Daniel's diary. She was a bit puzzled why I gave her this mobile phone. I lowered my eyes and smiled. The password is Daniel's birthday. Do you remember it? Amelia nodded. 30,209. It seems that everything she said at that time was indeed somewhat credible. After all, she still remembers Daniel's birthday until now. Amelia, they're only 4 things in Daniel's relics. One of them is the record of the Yanjiyu band that you gave. After you look at the content in the mobile phone, you will know the whole truth. Before he died, he still regarded you as a very good friend. Under my deliberate hint, there was crazy anticipation in her eyes again. She took out her mobile phone and was about to look through it. And I didn't stop her or stay. 18 I planned to find a place to sleep. After waking up, I would turn myself in. This sleep was extremely peaceful. When I woke up, I didn't know how much time had passed. I clicked on my mobile phone. The strong light stimulated me to frown. After getting used to it, I found the headline push not long ago. In the North Industrial Area of Qingcheng, a dismembered body case was discovered. The means are extremely cruel. Seeing this, I didn't feel any uneasiness as the perpetrator at all. I just calmly browsed the content. In the report, the identity of the deceased was confirmed. It was Alexander, the chairman of the company, and the school leader of a university. And the murderer of the case is still being hunted. In the hot comments below, my friend in the bureau said that it was cut into 67 pieces. There is a part directly. It is one of the most heinous cases in Qingcheng in recent years. How much hatred and resentment must there be? I lowered my head and swiped the screen. I still didn't have any emotions. After a while, I put down my mobile phone and was about to set off for the police station. At this time, a latest push appeared in front of me again. A murderer of the dismembered body case has surrendered himself. My fingers paused and I frowned. What's going on? Clicking on the content, I found that although the report said that the murderer had surrendered himself, the name was not mentioned. But regarding this matter, the only one who knows is James. The only person I can think of is him. Could it be that he? My back felt a little cold. At this moment, the mobile phone in the palm of my hand rang. I lowered my eyes and saw that it was my roommate Scarlett. Mia, where are you? James asked me to give you some things. Can you come and get them now? I calmed down my thoughts. After a moment of silence, I responded softly, okay. 19. What James left for me was a bank card and a note. Mia, go stay abroad for 2 years. I'll take the blame for this matter. After all, my family's connections can minimize the punishment for me to the greatest extent. Although my dad doesn't love me, he is especially afraid that I will embarrass him. He will deal with it. Don't worry. And all this is considered as me repaying what I owe you. Don't turn yourself in again. Best wishes. I couldn't tell what I felt inside. I had the intuition that the cicada chirping in my ears was sometimes far and sometimes near. When the edge of the note was wrinkled by me, I gradually came to my senses. I put away the bank card and put it in my pocket. I adjusted my emotions and thanked Scarlett. Outside the school gate, I took a taxi. The driver asked me where to go. Go to the Gongyi District Police Station. Where? Forget it. Go to the cemetery. That night, I stayed in front of Daniel's grave all night. And next day, I left the country. 20 in these years abroad. The main theme of my life is only to update Daniel's painting account. Fortunately, I used to take on painting assignments frequently before. I have some level, although it is not as talented as him. But in 5 years, I have also gained a lot of fans. And this spring, I plan to return to China. After arriving in Qingcheng, William came to pick me up with a bouquet of tulips. She is now a gold medal agent of an entertainment company. When we sat face to face, her eyes were instantly filled with tears as she looked at me. Sister, I didn't expect to see you again. Thank you. Thank you for everything you have done. Her voice was choked. After sobbing for half a minute, she continued. After Alexander died that year, her depression was completely cured as if the root cause had been eliminated. She finally stopped living in the past and regret and becoming numb day by day. Hearing this, I was relieved as before and patted her on the shoulder. That's great. She has finally gained some weight. At this time, William seemed to remember something. She lowered her head and took out a card from her bag and handed it to me. Sister, there are 1.42 million here. It's my salary for these years plus the 800,000 you gave me. I have saved it all. Sister, don't refuse. You must accept it. I didn't take it. Seeing this, William insistently put it by my hand. Then she continued to tell me what had happened in these years. She said that after James surrendered himself that year, he obtained the understanding of the victim's family. That is, Amelia's understanding. Later, James' family invited the top lawyer and took out the diagnosis result of bipolar disorder in the hospital earlier. Under many conditions, James was sentenced to 10 years. As for Amelia, for some reason, not long after her father died 5 years ago, she became mentally ill. She has been staying in a mental hospital all the time. Only at the end of every spring, she will go to the cemetery to sweep the grave. Hearing this, I nodded slightly. When these people were mentioned, they were strange and familiar, as if they were people I knew in a previous life. Subconsciously, I wanted to ignore them. At the end of the conversation, I asked about William's gossip. Then in these 5 years, have you been in love? Her eyes darkened and she crossed and rubbed her hands. No. Why? Because the person I met when I was young was too amazing. 21 late at night. The evening breeze blows. I opened the account and posted a winter scene painting left by Daniel before his death. There is a line of text below the painting. The content is, I only wish that in the next life, you can live your life smoothly.